I'm Reverend J. Stuart Glover. Welcome to Faith Talk. Today we will reflect on a message of hope from the Gospel of Luke. And in this story, we'll find that Jesus sees, he calls, he heals, and restores a woman who had been suffering for 18 years. This story reveals God's compassionate nature and serves as a reminder that he sees us today in our struggles. He cares deeply and is always ready to gift us with spiritual healing and freedom. So the text that came from Luke 13, verses 10 to 13, it reads in this way. On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. This is the word of the Lord. So let's picture this scene. It's the Sabbath, and Jesus is teaching in a synagogue. Among the crowd is a woman, crippled, bent over and unable to look up. She spent years of her life walking around with her head down, most likely feeling invisible and hopeless. Her story is relatable. Many of us carry invisible burdens: shame, financial stress, anxiety, physical pain. Each of these things can weigh us down, making us feel bent over in life. But despite her suffering, she still came to the synagogue, which is a testament to her faith. But even in the synagogue, amongst people of faith, she was most likely overlooked. She was practically invisible. She probably sat in the back, and nobody paid much attention to her. Nobody could help her. And in her condition, she really didn't have hope for a brighter tomorrow. But why do I love this story so much? I love this story because when we look at it closely, we get a clear picture of who God is, how much he loves us, and what he desires for us today. First, we see that Jesus saw her. Jesus noticed her. He saw her when others didn't, and he acknowledged her silent suffering. This story reminds us that just like he saw this woman, he sees you and I this morning. He sees all that we struggle with and all that we wrestle with. He sees all of our circumstance. He sees our discomforts physically, psychologically, economically, and spiritually. But Jesus didn't only see her. Jesus called her. Jesus did not wait for her to come to him. He called her forward, inviting her to step into his presence. He called her out of the crowd, out of her seat, out of her despair, out of her isolation, and out of her loneliness. And guess what? While she was still physically bent over, and her heart was lifted with a hopeful expectation, as she heard the voice of Jesus calling her, she lifted her eyes, looking up only at Jesus, gazing upon the Messiah. She courageously stepped forward in answer to the invitation of Jesus. In the same way, God is calling us today, inviting us to come forward into his presence in prayer with all of our frailties, all of our suffering, all of our faults, and all of our concerns, all that troubles us. So from this story so far, we saw that Jesus saw her, he called her, and then Jesus spoke to her. Jesus declared her freedom before anything had visibly changed. He said, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Jesus' words spoken into her life were performative. You know, his word makes things happen. His words changed her existence. It reframed her reality and prospered her life in an instant. Whatever it was that caused her pain and suffering and caused her to walk with her head down for 18 years was commanded to cease and desist. She was liberated. She was set free. This story is a reflection of the same God who speaks life and hope into our situations and shifts our reality through his promises and through his word. Jesus not only spoke to her, Jesus touched her. Finally, in this story, Jesus reaches out and touched her, and she was healed instantly. That touch represented his love for her, his acceptance of her, and his solidarity with her. And when we open ourselves to God's touch, when we don't resist God's touch, we can receive healing in ways we never imagined. The woman's response was spontaneous praise. First, she stood up straight for the first time in years, and she praised God. Her joy is a reminder to us that when we experience God's love and healing, it moves us to gratitude, thanksgiving, and worship. So as we heard about this woman being made whole by Jesus, she becomes a symbol of hope, reminding us that the risen Christ responds to our suffering in the same compassionate way. Her story inspires us to have faith in the restorative power of Christ that comes to us in graceful and often unexpected ways. Through this gospel story, our faith is increased. Our hearts and minds are pointed to God's providential care, and our hope is built up. I say today that there are better days ahead. God is calling us not only to be delivered from what binds us and to rise above circumstance that challenges us, but he is calling us. He's inviting us to be a reflection of his love, to care for the underserved in our communities, and to be a voice for the voiceless, help to the marginalized, and a welcome place for the outcast. He's inviting us to provide relief for the poor, the sick, the alien, and the orphan. God is still on the throne, and he is inviting us to partner with him so that his will is done on earth. I'm Reverend J. Stuart Glover. You are listening to Faith Talk. Thank you for joining our global listeners today, and I pray that this story encourages you, knowing that God sees you, cares for you, and he is the source of our freedom. I encourage you to share these episodes with family and friends. The episodes are available on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and YouTube. So please visit the website at www.revjstuartglover.com and leave your comments. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Amen.